Road campaigners say now is the time to get the A47 dualled all the way along, but should it be done and will it ever happen? Good evening. It's one of the key routes through Norfolk, connecting Lowestoft with the Midlands, but for many drivers it's a frustrating experience. Councillors have been talking about getting the A47 dualled for years. Now campaigners are calling on the government to commit to the project to open up the county for travellers and businesses. Neil Perry has more.
The Transport Secretary Chris Grayling visiting Norwich on Friday to help launch the Conservative Local Election Manifesto. He came at the time our roads and our infrastructure are, once again, near the top of Norfolk's agenda. With construction of the Norwich Northern Distributor Road well underway, attention is naturally now turning to the missing chunk of it to the northwest. The County Council are also supporting a bid for a third river crossing in Great Yarmouth, and a consultation's now started into improvements to the A47. And the Transport Secretary insists it's a road that's on his radar.
I think people have to understand this is a really important part of the country. The business developments around Norwich, the new technologies appearing around Norwich, mean it's absolutely imperative that this is a part of the country that has good links. It also has a flow of tourist traffic in that we want to protect. It's a really important part of the kind of county's economy. So we need to have modern links, and there are more improvements on the way. And yes, of course, there are always competitive pressures from across the country. There are lots of people who want and need new roads, but we understand the needs here, and that's why the A47, for example, is now on the way towards a whole series of big improvements.
So should the A47 be dualled all the way through to our county? Here to talk about this, Conservative councillor Martin Wilby from the A47 Alliance campaign group, and councillor Richard Bearman, who leads the Green group on the County Council. Also with us this evening, David Powles, who's the editor of the EDP. Let's start with you, councillor Martin Wilby. Should it happen, the A47 dualled all the way?
Yes, it should.
Why?
First of all, it's the ambition of the A47 Alliance, which I'm the chairman of, and that's a group of councillors, business people, made up from the LEP and MPs.
Why is it so important though?
Because you've already probably said earlier that we get problems with congestion, we get problems with connectivity with the Midlands. The A47 goes from Peterborough all the way through to Lowestoft now. We have the energy businesses now taking off on our east coast. We need to be able to get people there easy, safely and quite quickly. And we also have a lot of tourists come to our lovely county here in Norfolk, and they need to enjoy themselves here. And if they can get from A to B a lot easier and quicker, I'm sure they'll come back again.
Let's ask Richard Bearman, should it happen?
Well, no, clearly not all the way. I mean, there's parts of the A47, the Acle Straight, that goes through the Halvergate marshes, one of the most important marshlands that we have in this county, and a lot of the reason people come to see our natural landscape. Building a dual carriageway through it would be environmental vandalism on the grandest scale. Now, Martin talks about congestion. There's no way building a dual carriageway would solve congestion. If not, why do we have congested motorways? Why do we have congested dual carriageway? Building extra lanes or building extra roads does not solve congestion. That's the fundamental problem with this plan. Yes, it might address some of the safety issues, and I think we need to do much more urgent on the safety issues on the Acle Straight, for example, forgetting about dualling, which could be years away. OK,
let's ask David Powles. What are the readers of the EDP saying at the moment?
Well, there's two elements to it, really, I guess. One is it doesn't feel that we're that far along yet, so I guess we've probably not seen the letters pages on fire with debate around the dualling. But those that do, I mean, we do get abroad probably a 50-50 split. People who actively campaign against something like this, they will be very vocal in what they say. And then there's all the arguments that people made about the A11 that really are similar here, which is, it needs to happen because Norfolk needs to be open for business and be seen to be open for business. OK,
so we also spoke this week to George Freeman. He's the MP for Mid-Norfolk, and he feels that dualling the A47 is vital for the future prosperity of the county.
The 47 links the East Coast to the A1 and to the Midlands. Ultimately, the whole road needs to be dualled. I think everybody accepts we have to do it in sections. It's a very long road. We need to get on with this next phase that'll put Norwich and the heart of Norfolk right at the heart of the national road network. Of course, money is tight. I can tell you other counties are quite envious of what we've managed to get here. Ultimately, we're delivering the growth. And when the businesses and the jobs and the tax revenues flow, it's very easy for Treasury and for Department of Transport to sign off investment.
George Freeman MP. He says everyone agrees it needs to be done, Richard.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't ask me, obviously. I haven't asked the right people. But he also says money is tight. So where's the money going to come from? Central government has refused to fund the entire Northern Distributor Road. We're still in debt to some 40 to 45 million for that, which will have to come out of local taxation. Are local people going to want to spend more of their local money on this when services are already stretched at county council? If the government are desperate to build the A47 dual to the west of Norwich, lets them put their money and do the job properly.
Which bits need to be done most of all, do you think, Martin?
The bits now currently under consultation, there's 4 bits in Norfolk, and they're essential that these bits are done. There's a 6-week consultation taking place at this time. All the information is on Highways England's website and in the local press and elsewhere, so you can easily find those bits. But we need to get them on with those straight away. The funding is committed, well over 300 million, much more than 300 million I've been told.
But Richard's saying you could do the safety improvements without dualling.
I'm not sure about that. We need to get the dualling in place. That will make the traffic flow much more easier. Richard mentioned the Acle Straight. I went to Yarmouth last week. There was a car broken down on one side of the road. There was a mile tail back either side. You think of the time or work hours that are lost just because of one car breaking down. If we had the dual carriageway there in place, it would make life a lot easier for all of our visitors, for business. We heard about our economy. We need to support our economy in Norfolk, and we're here now planning for the future.
And people do get frustrated about that, don't they?
I think that's the key. I think that Norfolk is too much on a cliff edge in terms of transport. It would seem at all times, as we said there, it takes one car broken down and the whole network comes to a halt. You hear it every single morning when you come into work. If it's not Honningham, which is one of the first places that will be worked on, then it's Fickthorn. If it's not Fickthorn, it's the Acle Straight. And I do appreciate there are all sorts of environmental concerns around that, but for the future of this county, for this county to be seen as forward thinking, for this county to be easily accessible, not just to people from the outside, but actually to people who live and work here, then it's pretty integral that this work is done.
Okay, well, earlier this week, the Campaign to Protect Rural England released the results of a 10-year study into new roads and the effect on traffic congestion. Chris Dady from the CPRE says it found that after new roads were built, traffic actually increased and journey times didn't improve that much.
Over all the schemes looked at over that 10-year period, if you start with congestion, the study found that in the relative short term, additional traffic of 10%, so plus 10% was generated, and over a longer period that went to up to 50% as an average. So what was happening was the congestion pretty quickly came back, and as an average over that time, journey times improved by, on average, a minute to a minute and a half.
Martin Wilby, that's not very encouraging.
He's absolutely right though, isn't he? He's absolutely right.
Let's hear from Martin.
You asked me about the dual carriageway. We need to get those done. We need to attract businesses here. We need to attract jobs here.
But he says when it's done, the journey time only improves by about a minute.
I'll give you some examples what works well. The Southern Bypass, the A11, which we've all mentioned already. They're good examples to me, and I don't see people getting held up there now, and I see traffic moving much more freely and much more easily. I think sometimes
it comes down to image, and this really does echo the A11. And I remember sitting on this very sofa and talking about with the A11, let's look at tourism. If you come here with 2 kids and you have to sit for half an hour to an hour at the A11 at the gateway to Norfolk, and you've got kids in the background going, "Why aren't we moving, Mummy? When are we going to be there, Daddy?" That's true. Norfolk can be as beautiful and as amazing as it is, but if the journey in and the journey out was an absolute nightmare, or the journey around was a nightmare, the image that you're going to have is that it was nice, but actually it's easier to get somewhere else that's just
What about
nice.
then tourism and people getting to places like Great Yarmouth when they can't get across the Acle Straight?
Well, they don't have to come that way to Great Yarmouth. There's plenty of other ways of getting to Great Yarmouth. Ways to come to Great Yarmouth on holidays. No, we come on the train.
But are we putting people off coming to the
A12 already goes to Lowestoft, duals most of its way, not entirely 100%. Not against dualling per se, but this myth that building extra roads will solve congestion. Look at the Southern Bypass. The congestion exists on the Southern Ring Road as much as it was before, if not more, because of the vehicles coming off at Powles Bypass. The Northern Distributor Road, even the county's own predictions of the radial routes will have 10%, 15% more traffic on them when that road is built than they do now.
Answer that, Martin.
I go around the Ring Road quite a lot, around the northern part of the city. I've been held up for half an hour, 3/4 hour, an hour sometimes, especially say about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We get the NDR in place, it will deal with that.
All right, well, we'll talk a bit more about that. Of course, you've been getting in touch on social media as always. Martin Cowley says he groaned with dismay upon hearing Thickthorn is to be improved. Having tolerated a year of daily disruption at Thorpe Junction on the A47, it can all start again a few miles away and no easy way to avoid it. He's got to reflect some people's views there.
I appreciate that, but sometimes you have to put up with a little bit of discomfort perhaps to get the end result right. So
I think that's
with us on
a really key point, because people who travel in and out of Norwich will say, well, we've just had a year of absolute and utter disruption in the city centre. Now we've got a year of disruption, or possibly more, outside. I can see why people would think, well, where does it actually end? But how can you solve that? If we don't do it now, then it might have to be done in 10 years. You know, at some point, someone's going to have to put up with that.
It's similar when they do the rail improvements over the weekends that they put on buses. But if they don't do the rail improvements, things get worse.
OK, very briefly, Marion Fallon says it won't make much difference as no one will face up to the fact that driving standards in Norfolk and Norwich are shocking. She says, I've spoken to numerous other people from outside the area and they all mention how bad the driving is. It's not just young people, the old drivers are just as bad. Is that unfair?
No, that isn't unfair at all.
I wouldn't talk the drivers down in Norfolk. We're very good drivers. On the whole, I would say you're always going to get an odd one or two wherever you are across the country. But let's not talk Norfolk people down.
OK, all right.
The problem with the odd one or two is places like the Acle Straight, which sees some very bad examples of driving, leads to serious fatalities. So we've got to try and address those.
All right, thank you very much. Stay with us after the break. We'll be talking more about the A47 and whether we will see a fully dualled route anytime soon. Welcome back. Tonight we're talking about the A47, the backbone of Norfolk, which campaigners say should now be dualled all the way from Great Yarmouth to Kings Lynn and beyond. Here to talk about this is Councillor Martin Wilby from the A47 Alliance and Councillor Richard Bearman from the Green Party. Also here, the EDP editor David Powles. So, is it realistic to think we could dual the whole of the A47, or has our region already had its share of funding? We asked the Great Yarmouth MP Brandon Lewis.
I think it's a realistic ambition. I've been very clear for the last few years, all the time I've been a Member of Parliament for Great Yarmouth. The Acle Straight being dualled at the moment would just get us to traffic quicker. We've got to sort out those internal problems. We've secured the money for Gapton Hall improvements, Halfreys roundabout improvements, and importantly the Vauxhall Bridge. And hopefully we'll get the go-ahead for some work on the Third River crossing as well. All of that eases the internal challenges that then mean the Acle Straight becomes viable for a dualling bid. Well, I think the fact that we lost out for so long under 13 years of Labour, in fact they downgraded the A47 and the Acle Straight area, so we had to get it back on the agenda. So we were always playing catch up. We've done very, very well in the last few years, and we've got to keep pushing together to show the opportunities that East Anglia has.
So he thinks it's realistic, Martin Wilby, but we also heard George Freeman say that there isn't very much money there. Is it going to happen?
There's going to be restraints, but we have to start somewhere. I always say on anything, and the current schemes in the pipeline, they will find some of the areas be dualled, but we have to keep pushing and pushing. The A47 Alliance, along with all our MPs working together, keep pushing and lobbying government and DFT to get it dualled all the way. It's not going to happen overnight, but let's get on with what we can do now. The Acle Straight, you've heard mentioned there, that's got to be a key priority for us. It's a priority for the A47 Alliance for the next round of funding, and we're putting in a bid for that.
But this is going to be long term, isn't it? And there are lots of financial constraints on councils and central government as well.
I was just going to say, I thought it was really interesting Brandon Lewis managed to get a little Labour dig in there. I often wonder if they get trained, just like any subject you can find, here's a way to get a little dig against the opposition.
Unfortunately, there's nobody from Labour here today. Is there any
One thing I will
truth in
say
it, though, do you think?
is clearly transport is seen as a votes winner, because there never seems to be that much of an empty pot around transport, and I'm sure there's less money available than there was. I think the really key thing is we need to see, there was a talk, over the A11 about Norfolk United. Caroline Williams made a really good point a few weeks ago that she feels that the MPs currently at the minute are not united as one. We need to see, that needs to be where we start. We need, the Alliance is doing this work, the MPs need to come together, we need to play our part to make sure that central government knows that this is a really, really firm bid. And we remember when the A11 got the final money, there was kind of groans of recognition during the budget when it happened, because they realised that we'd been shouting about it so much, and we need to apply that same model again and make sure that it's a case of, he who shouts loudest.
And you're on the county council as well, Richard Bearman, so you know how tight budgets are and how the council's having to cut back.
If it's national infrastructure that's needed, it has to be funded by national government. It's going to cripple Norfolk County Council if they have to foot the bill like they have for part of the Northern Distributor Road. And I challenge you to talk about transport holistically. Transport does not just mean road building. Transport means doing things to the Ely Junction, electrifying the Cambridge to Norwich line, things that can be a benefit and low carbon benefit to the community. Bear in mind, the Halvergate marshes will probably be underwater in 10 years' time, so why are we building a road across it?
I think you make a really good point. I live in Heverset. I'd love to see the Heverset station open up again. Why don't you get people from Wyndham and Heverset? A viable option to get into Norwich is actually on a train route.
And the Dussendale, all of those things need to happen.
Ratkeith is another example. There are other options that are out there as well to get us moving more freely.
You mentioned rail, and you also mentioned all of the MPs, but there's an example there how they've been working together to get the new rolling stock, the Abellio agreement, and the Norwich in 90 campaign has worked, and there will be trains coming Norwich in 90 from London.
Okay,
that's a different matter.
How we can work by working together.
It's a whole nother programme. So what's holding up construction of a dual carriageway along the Acle Straight that you mentioned? Graham Plant is the leader of Yarmouth Borough Council, and he says one problem is snails.
I'd love to go down there with a shovel tomorrow and start working on the Acle Straight. I think everybody would. The reality is the Environment Agency have turned around and said that there's a rare species down there, a snail, that needs to be protected, so they've moved it to somewhere else, seeing how it's thriving. That's going to take 4 years. Monies won't become available until after 2020, but having said that, the work that's being done now to show that it's capable of being done, the work that's being done environmentally to get rid of the issues that could possibly stop it, it's a serious move to make sure that the Acle Straight can and will be dualled in the next 20 years.
So rare snails, it could take 20 years. I mean, people are going to be frustrated, aren't they, David Powles?
It's crazy. You have to put snails in protective custody to get a new road built, but that is the
Do you think people understand, though, these kinds of problems and why it takes so long?
I don't think they do, no. I think people react like most of us sort of did here. They raise their eyebrows and... But that is how it is, and it's important that we consider, that we do consider these things. Environment is important. It's important to a lot of people, so it has to be done properly.
A lot of people will say, Martin Wilby, 20 years until we dual the Acle Straight. Really, can we wait that long?
No, we can't wait that long.
Not if Graham gets down there with his spade tomorrow.
So the Acle Straight is a priority for the A47 Alliance, and we put it in for the next round of funding, which is called the RIS2 area funding, and that's for funding for things to start happening between 2020 and 2025. So I make that a total of 8 years away at the most.
But competition for that funding will be tough. It's not a done deal, is it?
I'm sure there will. That's why we have to put the business case in place, ready, so that we can prove that that's a priority for Norfolk and for the country.
And what's it going to do for the journey times if you did dual the Acle Straight?
It would make it
massive
safer,
environmental cost,
it would make it safer,
financial cost, and it would take less than a minute off the 9-mile journey. Surely we've got the wit to sit in and put the speed restrictions that are needed on the Acle Straight to make it a safe road without having to build a damaging dual carriageway.
So do you want to slow people down going down the Acle Straight?
I want to say that what is important about journeys, whether they be London to Cambridge, London to Norwich, is that they're predictable, not that they happen as fast as possible. The problem with speeding up the traffic in one part of the system, as you alluded to earlier, David, is that it comes to across congestion elsewhere.
So you don't need to just congestion.
You don't need to. You're always going to have congestion where you have
people
business.
Get frustrated. That makes it more dangerous on the roads. Let's get a proper road.
Norwich was congested. Norwich was congested in the Middle Ages. It was just congested with horse and cars.
We've moved on.
We have indeed. And the problem with moving on is we've moved on on to polluting fossil fuel burning vehicles. So it's not only congestion, it's air quality we've got to consider. We need to look at the environment we have as in more holistically. I would say if you want to get a dual carriageway to Yarmouth, the worst place to put it is through the Halvergate Marshes.
Where do you think the public perception is on that? Do you feel like you're a lone voice amongst a sea of people who want to see that, or do you think there is a population out there who agree with you?
I think there is a population. Even organisations like the CPRE, the Wildlife Trust, and other people who are not just interested in wildlife think, yeah, why do we have to constantly drive faster everywhere?
It's been pointed out to me. There's a straight line of the Acle Straight, and about 80 yards to the right of that, there's a straight line of the railway line. So there's a clear piece of land between there. All right, it's marshland, but there must be an engineering solution to quite easily put a dual carriageway alongside the existing road.
Once they've moved the Snails.
I'm
okay,
sure
we can't talk completely about roads in Norfolk without addressing that issue of the Northern Distributor Road and the missing link to the west of the city. So should it be joined up all the way round? Transport Secretary Chris Grayling.
Well, I mean, we recognise that you can't really have a big city like Norwich with a ring road that's got a bit missing. So that link will have to be sorted out. But it's not easy. It's one of those places where finding a scheme that balances the needs of the economy, the needs of the travelling public, the needs of freight, with a beautiful part of the countryside is really challenging in many places, and it's going to need smart design and very carefully to be worked through, so we don't end up doing something that has the wrong effect.
So our main concern today is the A47, but some people say there's no point in doing it if you don't join it up with the Northern Distributor Road.
Well,
Richard
of course,
Bearman.
the Wensum Valley link was the reason why the whole Northern Distributor Road was thrown out in the first place, and I still think there are serious environmental considerations which can't be overcome by necessarily just building a road through it. It's going to cost a lot of money, probably more than the existing Northern Distributor Road already. Where's that money coming from?
It's back on the agenda for the Conservatives in control of the County Council.
It certainly is.
Can it be done?
It's a priority for the council. The full council put it as one of their main priorities. So the majority of the councillors there all supported it. I think there probably only about 2 or 3 against, which was Richard and his
Do the
fellow.
public support it though?
Yes. I would think 90% of the people in Norfolk would say get on with it straight away. And there must be an engineering solution to the problem.
Is that what's being reflected by your readership?
It is, yeah. I mean, you wouldn't shoot a film and then get to 10 minutes left and say, let's just finish it here. I mean, that's effectively what they're doing here. And I fear it's going to cause a lot of congestion problems, as do a lot of people all through that part of the city and the outskirts of the city.
And around England. I mean, that's the argument, isn't there, that actually these people in those villages are going to suffer if it doesn't join up on that side?
Well, I think they're suffering already.
And have a proper road in place.
We do, but we don't need to take it through the route that's proposed through the Wensum Valley. If you're going to build it, you need to work out exactly the least damaging route that you're going to have.
Where could that be?
I don't know. I'm not an expert on these matters. I'm leaving it to others.
You really need the most direct route possible, but taking into account the sensitive area that we all recognise is there.
And how long will it take, Martin Wilby? What's got to be put in place for it to happen?
We need to do some work on it, which is already happening. We've put some funding towards it. It's a priority. I would like to think within the next 4 or 5 years, why not? It should be there.
Are you encouraged that the Transport Secretary is behind you on it?
He's fully aware of it. You heard him there saying it seems strange not to finish the road off, so he's fully behind us.
I don't think you can progress with the A47 until you've sorted this out.
Next time he's there, ask him to bring the cash, please,
This has got to be done.
Well, I mean, that's a key point, isn't it, that Richard raises, is the money's got to come from somewhere, and local and national government's tight on funding.
We've been good at accessing funding here for Norfolk. We really have. The government has been helping us. In the last few years, we've secured just over 300 million here now, the money for the NDR, and I'm sure they're listening to us. They want to work with us and we want to work with them, but we have to put a strong case forward, a strong business case for the benefit of all of Norfolk, the economy, jobs, everything else here.
All right, thank you very much.
You.
That's all we've got time for this evening. Thank you to my guests and to you for watching. If you want to send us your thoughts, you can find us on the Mustard TV Facebook page. We're also on Twitter @Mustard This Week, and you can now watch the programme again on the Mustard TV YouTube page. Good night.